Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Richie Furay was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1997 as a founding member of Buffalo Springfield. He called in to discuss tomorrow's release of his new album of country duets called In the Country, as well as memories of meeting Stephen Stills and Neil Young to form Buffalo Springfield in 1966 for a string of iconic hits like For What It's Worth. Hey, Richie Furay. Hey, thanks so much for joining us on WTOP.
Good morning. My pleasure.
Of course, legend of, Buffalo Springfield. That's what you're in the Rock Hall of Fame for, Poco, so many things over the years, and we can get to all that in a minute. But first, the main thing we want to talk about is you're releasing your first studio album in 7 years. It's called In the Country. I believe it's going to be out on July 8th. So tell me about this new album. You have a couple cool guest appearances, and just tell what we got.
What a challenging and fun project. Val Garay, the producer, who I worked with in 1979, brought up the idea to do this album of country standards or country hits, basically. And we started putting our list together because I wasn't sure, how far back he wanted to go. But when the very first song on my list was the very first song on his list, I knew we would be on our way to something. And so we just put 14 songs together. Actually, there's 12 and 2 bonus tracks. But what a fun project, and I'm just so excited that Val came and asked me to do this project.
Awesome. Remind us of some of the big names. There's some real big names everyone's going to know that join you on this album.
Well, probably between Vince Gill and Timothy B. Schmidt, those are the two big ones.
Of the Eagles, of course. Yeah.
Yep.
And Jason Sheff of Chicago, John Barry. It's stacked. Tell me about, as we prepare to pick up this album, break down a song or two. Let's highlight a song or two, so which, tell me a song you want to talk about.
Well, the very first song on the album, Somebody Like You, that was one of the songs that I really wanted to do. Number one, Keith Urban is just, he is just such the real deal, he writes, he sings, he plays, he's just a great entertainer. But this song, there is just something about the melody of the song that is just so fresh. You cannot hear this song without feeling good. In fact, I played it the other night in Nashville and just had the audience sing along, and everybody was singing because this song just makes you feel good. And, part of the why I would ever want to make a record is I want to make music, make people feel good. And this song here just really spoke to me in that way. Then there's songs like, I Hope You Dance, which I just love Leanne Womack, and the song just really touched my heart. There's one other here. Let me just look at this.
You got Walking in
I'm
Memphis.
Already There.
Oh, I'm already there. The Lone Star song.
Some songs, I'm telling you, when they first came out, and even when we started to choose this one, I chose that song also. But I'd be driving in my car just listening to it, trying to get it memorized and everything, And man, I just started break down crying.
Oh, one is...
and here I am talking about songs that make you feel good, but also songs that just reach deep down in your heart for personal experiences,
Oh, I'm the sunshine in your hair and the shadow on the ground. How do you not get goosebumps when you?
Oh my gosh, I just love that song.
Well, same with I Hope You Dance. You mentioned. That one is that'll get you emotional too. And I remember my grandfather when that came out, he bought it. He gave it to my little sister. He was like, "This reminds me of go as you go journey in life." Like that song is. But then or Somebody Like You. You mentioned when Keith Urban sings, "I want to feel the sunshine shining down on me and you." It just makes you smile.
I know it does, and with I Hope You Dance, every single line and every single thought is such a positive thought. Right. I hope you never lose your sense of wonder. You always, you get your fill to eat, but you always keep that hunger, and don't never fear those mountains in the distance, but never don't settle for the path of least resistance.
Yep,
It's just these songs. I don't know. I really feel like all of the songs that we chose and we picked, just have some positive, right now, I just really believe we need that in our lives. We just need a really positive outlook. And some of the songs, they're not quite in the same vein. I picked a Ricky Nelson song because Ricky Nelson had such an influence on my life with Ozzy and Harriet back in the day. And so I picked Lonesome Town to do. And I don't. These songs are all special songs, and I really hope that when people get a chance to hear them, that they're actually hearing. Like, I guess today, young people, I guess they make their own little playlists, and that's what this album is to me.
Right.
This is my playlist.
This is your Spotify playlist.
That's it.
Oh, well, thanks for walking us through a couple of them, because they are some of my favorite country. If you can't tell, I'm a big country fan as well as
I can tell.
but yeah, you plucked out some of the great ones from over the years. So it's going to be, we encourage all our listeners to check this out. It's a great collection. Well, awesome. Well, whenever I have someone famous like yourself on, a Rock Hall of Famer, I love hearing about, your whole journey and everything. So, take me back to the very beginning. Where'd you grow up? How'd you get into music?
I grew up in Yellow Springs, Ohio, a little small town near Dayton. And, music wasn't really a big part of my family life. My dad liked to listen to the radio and my mom sang in the church choir. But other than that, it was just something that I wanted. I asked my parents for a guitar when I was 8 years old and for Christmas. And they brought me this. Oh, God, I came downstairs. I can't even tell you, man. And I looked underneath the tree and saw the shadow of this guitar there. And it was, when I got up close, man, it was this puke green with cowboy scenes all over it, gut string guitar. And I walked it upstairs. I said, I want a real guitar. I don't know what I was thinking of the day, but anyway, they were really gracious and I'd love to have that guitar right now.
Right. But, exactly. Santa was working hard for you. You just didn't get it.
As time went on, music began to pick up for me a little bit. In college, it was folk music. And, actually in high school, I was like the little Anthony and the Imperials. I was the lead singer for some of the upperclassmen that sang some doo-wop music, Dion and the Belmonts and that type of stuff. And, then I went to New York in 1964, though, to be a folk singer. And I met Stephen Stills back there.
The legend, and
we put a little group together. When it broke up, he moved to California. And, I didn't know what I was going to do at the time. I knew I still wanted to play music, but I also wanted to eat. So I got a job up at Pratt & Whitney Aircraft for a while because my cousin he was an executive up there. And then a friend of mine who lived across the street from me in New York brought the Byrds' first record up to me to listen to and said, you got to hear this. And when I heard that record, by the way, the friend was Graham Parsons.
Oh my God.
And when I heard the record, I said, I got to get a hold of Stephen and find out what he's doing. And he's got back to me after a while, and he said, man, come on out to California. I got a group together. All I need is another singer. And so I told him I was going to get my affairs all in order, and I'd be out there soon. And so when I got out there, Stephen and I were the band. There was no band. It was just me and him.
Wow.
So that was kind of a crazy time. And, when you're living it, when you're going through it in the moment, it was a little bit of a shocker. But it all worked out for the better because Stephen and I sat in a little apartment, and we learned all of the songs that he wrote for the first Buffalo Springfield record. We learned how to harmonize. We learned how to sing in unison. We learned how to phrase songs together. And so when it was time to put this record, to make the record, we were really far in advance. But so the time was well spent. But boy, when you were in the middle of it, it was like, oh my gosh, what have I done? But it was the right move. And, a couple weeks into that, or maybe about, 2 or 3 weeks into that, we met we met Neil Young and Bruce Palmer. Each of us had met him at different times along the way, though. On Sunset Boulevard, Neil had come down from Canada to actually find Stephen. And there we were, man, stuck in traffic right across on Sunset Boulevard as Neil was leaving town. And we got out of the cars, in a parking lot, Ben Frank's parking lot, a little restaurant there. And talked about starting a band together, got back to the apartment, and that was it, man. We started a little band back in 1965.
A little band that became legendary. Not a super long run originally, but just a powerful, iconic group. I mean, well, and I want to double back for a second. The band you referenced in the beginning was the A-Go-Go Singers, because you were with Cafe A-Go-Go, the famous spot in New York. That's where you and Stephen Stills first hooked up. But once you made it to L.A., the big band we're talking about is Buffalo Springfield. So so you said it was you, Stephen Stills, Neil Young, of course, Bruce Palmer, and Dewey Martin. I guess that was the original lineup there. Yep. How did you come up with the name? What was the Buffalo Springfield? What's in a name?
Well, there was a steamroller that was working on Fountain Boulevard or Fountain Avenue. I can't remember I think it's Fountain Avenue in Los Angeles, very close to where we were staying at the time, as Buffalo Springfield. And we, vandalized the steamroller, took some of the signs off of it, came back, put it on a fireplace mantle in one of our friends' house, said, "Hey, that looks like a good name," So little did I know that the Springfield that was 9 miles from my hometown in Ohio, Springfield, Ohio.
No way. Small world, right?
I had no idea when we got the sign. And, one of the interesting things, after the group got started, we got a little note, or I got a note from the company who had disbanded and went on to Harvester International, and I don't know what else they kind of became a subsidiary of, but they wrote back and they said, "Oh man, it's so good to see the name out there. Have fun," and all that other good stuff. They didn't say stop using the name or we're going to sue you or whatever. Right. But they said use that name and have fun. So it was a steamroller.
Wow, I never knew that. Well, you hit popular music like a steamroller, man. Tell me about that. You mentioned that very, very first album. I guess it was a self-titled album. Yeah, in '66. Tell me about, the big song was For What It's Worth. I'll get to that in a second. But tell me about that debut single, Nowadays Clancy Can't Even Sing. Remembers of putting that one together?
Yeah, one day, Neil came down from Toronto to New York City, where we were still maintaining a little apartment there at 161 Thompson Street. And he stayed with me, and he played me some of the songs. He was down there to peddle songs, actually. And he played me Clancy, and I just fell in love with the song. Now, move forward to when Buffalo Springfield, because that was actually one of the hooks also, I think, that got Neil to want to be part of the band at that particular initial meeting and all, because Stephen and I had learned that song as well as all the songs that Stephen was writing, and I just shared that one with him. He kind of knew it, but I had it really in my heart. But when it was released as the first single, I really think that was a mistake.
Really? Why do you say that?
Yep. And I say that because the song is it's just a little strange. People ask me, what's the song about? And I say, well, you got to ask Neil. I don't have a clue. Actually, I think it was about a guy in his school that was kind of bullied and all. But the song, here's my feeling.
Is it like a Pearl Jam, like a Jeremy, like he's getting picked on? Like Pearl Jam?
That's what I think the song was really, part of it was about.
Right.
But the song that, in my opinion, that should have been this very first single, because it was so much more accessible to a general public, would have been "Do I Have to Come Right Out and Say It?" I think it was more of a song that people can grab onto. Because Clancy was just, is it esoteric? Is that the word I want to use?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah,
it's just a
little
strange. And Do I Have to Come Right Out and Say It? It was just so simple. It was a love song, had a great melody and a great message. And that's just, hey, Jason, that's just my personal opinion, but that's how I felt about it.
Hey, I love hearing that, because I'm sure different band members would say different things. But you're right. I guess you're, mid 60s, it was some heady, trippy times. You could probably get away with releasing an esoteric one first, maybe. But you had Sit Down, I think. I Love You. There was a bunch on that first one, but we got to talk about For What It's Worth. That is Buffalo Springfield's biggest lasting legacy. And we actually had I talked to Steven Stills a couple years ago when Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and we invite our listeners to check out that podcast in our archives. But they came and sang like at the National Christmas Tree lighting, and I was talking to Steven Stills about, and I asked what line registered the most for him from that song still today. And actually, I'll ask you what and then I'll reveal what he said. What line in For What It's Worth do you think is still applicable the most today?
Well, I mean, probably Paranoia Strikes Deep. I don't know.
Into your heart it'll creep, right?
Yeah.
I think he said there's a man with a gun over there was his line.
Yeah.
But anyway, tell me about the recording of that song. That is an all-timer.
Well, did he tell you the backstory of that too? And this is we were over at his house, and Ahmet Ertegun was in town. Ahmet was the president of Atlantic Records, and the album, as we released it, first off, it didn't quite gain the momentum or have the success that I think everyone was looking for. So Ahmet was out in California just looking to hear songs that we were going to put on the second album. And after Stephen played some songs and Neil played some songs and I actually played a couple songs, we're packing up our instruments and everything. And Stephen said, "Oh, I got one more For What It's Worth."
That's the title.
And that was it.
Wow.
Because the title isn't even in the song anywhere.
Right. Most people just know it as "Stop Children, What's That Sound?"
Right.
And
so that's the backstory that I remember.
Wow, I didn't know that. You're right, and I never thought about that. Yeah, the title is not actually in it. But I guess speak in broader terms, speak to how it sort of captured what was going on in that era. The anti-war
we came out of folk music, and folk music had a lot of protest music, if you will. And I when I heard the song, it went right. It went over my head just like whew, as a song, because I was into Bluebird and Rock and Roll Woman and Mr.
Right.
Soul, and we're out there rock and rolling at the Whiskey A Go Go, and here's this little, "Oh, there's something happening here," and it was just a little, to me, but Ahmet said, "That's a hit. We have to record that song." And so I think we were in the studio, within just, days, and there at Gold Star. And, practically, I think most of that first album was all done on 4-track recording too.
Oh, cool. Good to know. Well, you mentioned a couple of the songs on the second album, so let's dive in. It was Buffalo Springfield again. Such an original title, man. in 67, it didn't matter because you know what? The songs were great. Tell me about, you mentioned Bluebird and Mr. Soul. I guess Mr. Soul was a Neil Young, he wrote that, and then Stephen Stills wrote Bluebird. But tell me about sort of, why you think those two songs are still, loved by your fans today.
I think, songs are so personal to people, and why it might be, so popular in somebody's mind. Someone might grab onto, well, I love the melody. Others, I love the story. I mean, Bluebird was obviously about a relationship. Mr. Soul seemed to be a rock and roll. Neil's, vision of just being a rock and roll player, or a star, which he turned into be quite so. But I mean, the songs were just, they were fun to play. They were songs that we were just, what do I want to say? I don't know. We the day we were able to experiment with so many different things. And as you look at even at the other songs on the album, like Expecting to Fly, something like that, we were listening to the Beatles and we heard what they were doing, and we wanted to join in that little crowd, if we could, have just experimentation. And what was so much fun was you could do a song, like Expecting to Fly, and you could do a song like Mr. Soul, but then you could also do a song like Child's Claim to Fame, which was a little bluegrassy song. So we weren't being pigeonholed. I have to say, as far as my career goes, that was one of the things that I really look back on and just I'm so happy about. We never had to be like somebody else. We want you to sound like this person or that person. There was so much music that was going on in Los Angeles at the time, from the Doors to the Beach Boys to the Turtles to, there's so much different music that people were just experimenting with. It was just a great, fun time to be making music.
Absolutely a great time for music. And before we run, we got to round it out with the third album. I guess it would be Buffalo Springfield's last, not if you don't count all the compilations and stuff, but
Yeah,
it's
right.
called, because those went on for years, thankfully. But the third official studio album was Last Time Around.
Uh-huh.
A bunch of songs, but I wanted to, of course, ask you about maybe the most famous one that you wrote, Kind Woman. It was the last
Yep.
one on the backside. So it was sort of you have the distinction as sort of writing the very last Buffalo Springfield song.
Well, there you go. Leave it to me to break that band up.
You ended it. No, but memories of writing when that song came to you, and you're sort of the writing process of it.
Well, I'll tell you, there, at the Whiskey A Go Go, there was this lady that came and stood right in the front. Actually, she came with her boyfriend, who was in a group called The Leaves at the time. And he said, "You got to hear this new band down at the Whiskey." And so she came down, and she would, like, night after night, because we were there for about 6 weeks, and she would be right there in the front row. And man, it's, even without my glasses on, man, she caught my attention. And I wrote that song about her, and today we're 55 years together.
Oh, congratulations. We'll all be so blessed if we could all our marriages can make it that long. That's what I'm going for, man. Well, we also, I guess around that time, I guess that lineup of Buffalo Springfield at the end included Jim Messina at the time, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
and Future would do Loggins and Messina. But I want to talk to you about Jim, because you and him would go on to form the country rock band Poco.
Yeah.
Tell me about, and I guess what would you say the most famous song? Probably Crazy Love, but talk about just those days, because that sort of will sort of be our segue back into your new country album. But we got to hit Poco.
Jimmy and I mean, we saw the writing on the wall. We knew when, the group was not going to be, going on much longer. And we just got to talking and said, hey, when the group breaks up. And my feeling was, as long as Stephen was in the band, I was in the band. Because when I look at Buffalo Springfield, I say it was Stephen's band. He was the heart and soul of the band.
Right.
So when he left the band, and Jimmy and I just decided we were gonna follow on with our vision of doing this kind of, hopefully crossing over country music and rock and roll music, actually going from the rock and roll side to the country side. And so that was really what was the beginning there, with Picking Up the Pieces being Poco's first record of and that song kind of tells the story, hey, you guys, I'm really just a lot like you, speaking to the country market at the time. And so it was that's what we had in mind, and we followed through with that vision, and we actually started a genre which became some of the biggest, probably the most significant American rock and roll music, with the Eagles. Glenn Fry used to sit on my living room floor when I was rehearsing Poco.
No way.
Oh yeah, right there at 2300 Laurel Canyon Boulevard. There he came in, man, and
that was before he was on the corner in Winslow, Arizona. He was on your
That's right. Before he was on the corner of Winslow, Arizona, he was there at 2300 Laurel Canyon Boulevard.
That would have been too long to fit into the lyric there. But you're so right. You, and then of course the Eagles with Fry and Henley and everybody. That is one of the coolest. I just smiled. My heart swells thinking about that sort of country rock era, and it became, I mean, even a little harder rock as it went on, obviously.
Yeah.
Post Hotel California on, but a lot of what the country music today kind of sounds a lot like that, more of country rock vibe. You guys kind of started all of it.
We did.
Final seconds before we plug the album one last time, but final seconds, just to put a button on the Buffalo Springfield. What was it like going into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with those guys? Because like we said, 3 albums, but 3 massively important cultural, groundbreaking. It was a groundbreaking moment. So of course you would go in the Rock Hall, but it's still that's got to be a nice honor.
Jason, it was. And I mean, the people would recognize you and your peers, and acknowledge, your contribution to music. It was very humbling, and it's really a great honor to be holding on to.
That was in '97, I guess. And you did like a comeback tour shortly after that for a little bit, right?
We did about 10 years ago. Yeah.
Nice.
And that was without, obviously, Bruce and Dewey, who had passed away. But we did We did 7 shows.
Do you stay in touch with Neil Young or Stephen Stills or any of those guys?
Yeah, and actually we're getting together in about 3 weeks to do an interview for a documentary that's my manager's putting together with me, and Cameron Crowe is going to be doing the moderation of the interview.
Really? Almost
So
famous
it's gonna
himself.
We're going to see each other in a couple weeks.
Oh, that's so good to hear. Long live Buffalo Springfield. That's what I say. It is iconic stuff. But well, all right, look, keep an eye out for that interview or in that documentary. But in the meantime, pick up a copy of Richie Fury's first studio album in 7 years, folks. It's called In the Country. So many great songs. Somebody Like You, I Hope You Dance. What else did we say? Walking in Memphis. I'm already there. I'm already crying. Hey, thanks so much for doing this. This was awesome getting to talk with you and Buffalo Springfield memories. This was great.
Thanks, Jason. Talk to you, man. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
All right, be well. Bye. Thanks so much for joining us on Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.